I have 4 amazing reasons I always recommend Intel for all new gaming PCs, so listen up. First, Intel obviously stands for intelligence, so it's great, whereas AMD is just and spelled wrong, so it's dumb. Second, blue is a cooler color than red, meaning Intel must run cooler and faster. Third, Intel's chip numbers are higher. Their latest chip is called the i9-14900KS, whereas AMD's turbo ones are like 7600. That's 7,000 less! Lastly, Intel is so much better value. Look, this AMD chip is an insane £600, but the Intel i5-14600K 14-core 20-thread beast is just 300. That's amazing value. Alright, cut. Oh, thank you very much. That's very nice. Oh, shh. If you didn't pick up on the satire there, that was, in fact, a joke. It's actually a reference to this, an article published last week on xdadevelopers.com, making some frankly even more insane claims than my mockumentary did. The article is actually called 4 Reasons I Always Recommend Intel over AMD to the Average Gamer, with the byline, for most gamers out there, Intel is clearly the better choice when building a gaming PC. Here are the simple reasons why. It is exactly as insane as it sounds, so let's go through it and just see how high on Intel's marketing the writer was when writing this. Although, to be abundantly clear, this is not a call for anyone to harass XDA or any of their writers on my behalf. Don't bother giving them the clicks. Point 1. AMD's stability issues are still worse than Intel's. This is an incredibly funny one, because it's a completely unrelated title masking a complete false equivalency. His point is essentially that AMD chips don't like running with overclocked RAM, whereas Intel chips generally don't mind it. This is a false equivalency because the chips themselves don't seem to benefit from super overclocked RAM speeds, whereas Intel's chips do seem to benefit at least a little bit more from faster RAM. It's also an incredibly marginal difference, often not worth the extra cost, and it voids your CPU's warranty too. But to say, well, AMD doesn't work well with the overclocked RAM, so it's bad, is laughable. It's also funny that he brushes past the recent Intel CPU game crashing issue that Hardware did a full video on talking about this week. He says, well, that only applies to the 13900K and 14900K, which is like too high end for the average gamer anyway. Yet he is complaining that you can't use overclocked RAM on AMD chips? Like, what? I do also want to point out that the final paragraph of this point here is kind of insane too. What this boils down to is that anyone not willing to grapple with RAM replacements or tweaking BIOS settings for manual memory overclocking should simply pick Intel for their gaming build. That is a truly amazing leap of logic there. If you don't want to spend your time overclocking your RAM, just buy in-spec RAM for either CPU. If you want the best performance on either platform, it's also generally known that tweaking the timings ends up being more important than the overall transfer rate, and that's something you would need to do on both types of chips. I also think that it implies that DOCP and Expo don't exist either, which is just flat out wrong. The next point is amazing. AMD's power efficiency isn't a huge factor, and every gaming PC has a decent cooler. The meat of it here is basically arguing that if you have a suitable CPU cooler, who cares that it's a space heater? Apparently power consumption doesn't matter, and ironically that overclocking, quote, isn't something you'd be interested in being a no-nonsense gamer. Wait, I'm confused. Are you a no-nonsense gamer who doesn't care about overclocking, or do you care a lot about overclocking, especially your memory, so that Intel's chips which support that better is, a really big important factor? Which is it? Obviously, this point is laughably dumb too, even if you ignore power consumption, which, yeah, especially for a CPU while gaming, isn't likely to be hundreds a year in power bill difference. You still have all of that heat being dumped into your room, and on a hot summer night, that's an absolute killer. It's also a significant point to consider. Intel's chips generally drink power. You can't just negate a negative point by saying, well, yeah, but who cares really? Point 3. Intel provides more bang for the buck. Budget and mid-range have Intel written all over them. He compares the 13600KF at under $250 to the 7600X, which is cheaper. $25 cheaper by his reckoning, but the 13600K is faster, right? I mean, he even says so. Well, Hardware Unboxed says otherwise. In their 12-game average, the 7600X comes out ahead, even with the oh-so-precious faster RAM on the i5 too. So how is the 13600K a better value? Well, I don't know. To then follow that up with choosing Intel places you in a better position in terms of the value you get from your processor is the most unsubstantiated sentence I've read so far. As for point 4, AMD's platform longevity isn't a must-have. The average gamer isn't chasing easy CPU upgrades. Honestly, I want whatever the writer was smoking here. I mean, he claims that the average budget gaming PC should last for 3 to 4 years without any upgrades. I mean, I don't believe that, but cool. Guess how long AMD supported AM4 for? There are still new AM4 chips being launched in 2024. From 2017 to, let's be harsh and say 2022 when AM5 launched, well, that's still 5 years. So someone who built a budget system in, say, 2018 can still upgrade to a brand new generation of chips in 2022. That is an incredible benefit. So to just discount it with no substantive justification is insane. And this sentence is just, like, chef's kiss. Don't get me wrong, it's a huge plus for those after seamless processor upgrades, but that's not something everyone cares about. This is why Intel's Raptor Lake CPUs are great for mainstream gaming PCs, despite them being the last generation to support the existing LGA 1700 socket. Or in short, while this is a genuinely compelling benefit, I don't care, which is why these effectively end-of-life chips are great. I mean, even better, he then says that the value for money is more important than the upgradability, which discounts the fact that upgradability is a major factor in the value proposition. Like, if you know that you can buy an AM5 board today, some DDR5 and a compatible cooler, and in like 5 years' time you can upgrade to a brand new, much faster CPU, well then your upgrade cost is just the cost of the new CPU. If you buy a Raptor Lake chip today, you know that you will have to buy at least a new motherboard, maybe a cooler, and maybe even RAM, just to use it. To claim that you care about value and then discount a significant portion of the value proposition shows that this is not a well thought out discussion. The final paragraph is just hilarious, talking about how weird it is that popular sentiment is driven by marketing, enthusiast opinions, and YouTube videos. You know, like every other industry, and how AMD might turn out to be the better choice for many users. But, by and large, the average gamer stands to gain a faster, better value, and safer gaming rig by picking up Intel over AMD in the current market. A claim substantiated by no observable facts. Genuinely, how much money did Intel pay you, XDA? Because that's almost the only reason that I can imagine you'd write drivel like this. Now, somewhat hilariously, they later updated the article with this note. They changed the headlines to pretend to be more balanced, but almost all of the text is the same. There are a couple of minor tweaks to soften the shilling, but the points are still ostensibly the same, as is the conclusion. This still acts as a ChatGPT written Intel marketing device. Now, I don't actually think that Intel paid for this. Doing so and not disclosing that relationship is actively illegal in a lot of countries and is shady AF either way, so without evidence of those payments or contracts, I'm going with Occam's razor here. Realistically, this is the writer's preferences written in a pseudo-professional way in an effort to meet a seemingly Sisyphean publication quota and to drive ragebait and clickbait viewership. I mean, look at how many ads are meant to be on this page. I think it's 11 by my count. I have to imagine that this article got significantly higher traffic than usual, so I guess it worked. Just looking at one of the other writers' profiles on XDA's site shows they are contributing at an insane pace. At least one article per day, with some days having 3 articles. That is just an insane pace for any level of quality. Like this article about best motherboards for Intel Core i9-14900K. This is a fairly cursory spec sheet comparison of a few higher end boards. There's no testing here, there's no insight into the usability or overclocking stability, it's all just reading from the product page and going, well, that one has some more ports. If I was going to post a video with the best X for Y like that, I would want to have tested all of the options and be able to give you a genuine insight into the products themselves and their performance, more than just comparing spec sheets. This sort of content mill leads to content like this, and sensationalist crap like the Intel one. It's all affiliate link farming clickbait. It's targeted to the less experienced and knowledgeable people who are just searching for what CPU to buy for gaming and are being delivered a professional sounding article that gives, at least on the surface, some pretty sound points for why you should buy one over the other, via this little link right here. As a wider point I wanted to address, I don't really get fanboyism. You gain nothing from attaching yourself to a single brand or product. The market changes, your situation changes, so the best choice for you changes too. Maybe Intel does genuinely make the most sense for you right now. Awesome, go for it. But maybe in a couple years, AMD makes the best chip for you at that point. But if you're a die-hard Intel fanboy, well, now you're stuck with a worse chip because you've attached yourself to a brand who really doesn't care about you. These are all corporations. If AMD was in Intel's position, they would be just as cutthroat and anti-consumer. It's so much better to make an informed decision than it is to take it as a personal attack when a competitor does a better job. There is no one right answer. Intel is not infinitely better than AMD, nor is AMD the sole choice you should make. It's different for everyone. I think I'd also like to note that sort of sensationalism, often on purpose, is designed to annoy you and to, it's called rage bait for a reason. And so it's good to try and limit your exposure to those sorts of things and limit your reaction to them, because your reaction is what helps drive further clicks and, viewership and whatnot. But also call it out when you see it. So it's kind of a bit of a balance. Don't be drawn in by it, but also it's a good thing to call it out. With that said though, those are obviously all of my thoughts, but I would love to hear yours in the comments down below. What do you think about the article itself, the sort of that content mill grind, and Intel versus AMD? Let me know in the comments. This is obviously a bit of an unusual video for me. I will be back to perfectly normal tech reviews in the next video, so feel free to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already to be notified of those new videos. Check out plenty of other videos in the end cards, and in the spirit of actually collecting data and doing useful analysis, if you want to collect your own data on response times or latency, I make my own hardware, the open source response time tool and open source latency testing tool, and they're both available at osrtd.com, link in the description. Otherwise, thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you on the next video.